This is a potato demo by Medius.Re, where we will look at the compare feature using data available through Potatoes USA's use of Medius.Re. Let's see how the compare variety feature can help us dig down deeper into variety information. So I'm going to go over here to the sidebar and we're going to click on compare varieties to pull this page up. And again, you can click on this little icon up here to slide that sidebar over, which gives you more screen real estate here to work with. So the first thing you're going to do is pick what is the range of data that I want to work with. We're going to go with 3 years here for now just to start, so 2018 to 2020. And then I'm going to come down here to add variety, and I'm going to start adding the varieties that I'm interested in looking at. So let's say I've heard about this variety Petoskey. I can go ahead and add that, and it'll go fetch the 3-year data for that. And then there's another variety that I'm interested in, Mackinac. And then I want to compare that to varieties that I know about. So let's add Lamoka, and then let's go ahead and add in Snowden. So now I've pulled these 4 varieties in. As you can see, all of that 3-year data has been fetched and is displayed over here in columns where I've got my varieties lined up, and then I've got all the data fields that are part of my currently selected trial group, which snack is the one that is currently selected. You can pick any one of these ones that are bolded, meaning that these varieties existed in those trial groups. But we're going to continue to look at the snack data as we have in other videos. So I've got all of the data that I need over here to analyze these varieties side by side. Now let's say I wanted to put my checked material, the ones that I know first. You can come over here and click on any one of these and just drag them to reorder them so that you can look at them in any particular order that you want. And you'll notice that as I change the order here, the order in these columns changed over here. Let's go ahead and take a look at our list here to see what kind of information do we get from this list of varieties. So the first thing you're going to see is if there's another name that the variety is known by or has been called by, whether it's a breeder number or some other indicator, that's going to be shown here. For example, NY139 was the breeder number for Lamoka before it was named. And then if the information is known, you'll see the breeder underneath the variety. Then over here in the second column, what you're going to see is these are the dates here where there's data available for that variety. So in this particular case for Lamoka, there's data available from 2008 to 2010, and then 2012 to 2020. And then below it is the pedigree information, the female and the male varieties. And then these icons here, you can, this one right here, you can jump to the summary modal that we've looked at before just by clicking on that icon. So it's a quick way to get to like a data sheet if that's available, or any varietal attributes information that you need. This one here will show you any images associated with that variety. So it'll pull up images associated with Lamoka. And again, you can click on thumbnails here and you can go through and you can see all of those images that were associated with Lamoka. And then the X here would be to remove that variety from this list in the comparison list. So let's move over here and look now at what we've got in the actual data section. So as you can see up here, we currently have 2020, 2019, and 2018 selected because based on our trial year date range here, we've said that's the only data we're interested in. If you wanted to remove a specific year, you can go ahead and uncheck that, and as you saw, the data updated automatically. The other option you have over here is to be able to select trial blocks. So let's say you weren't interested in storage locations, but you're only interested in fresh locations. You can go ahead and just check the locations that you care about. And as you can see, the data will update accordingly. We're going to go ahead and select all of those so that we can see all of the data. And then the other option over here now, data fields, is by default all of the data fields will be selected. But let's say you didn't want to show a couple of these, you can just uncheck those and it will make them go away from your compare view here. That can be beneficial, and we'll look at this here in a minute, if you're going to be exporting this data or taking an image export for use in a presentation and you only want to highlight specific information. The other option you have here, just in trying to prepare ourselves as we get ready for looking at this data, Over here on the far right, there are these double vertical lines. And if I click on those, I can resize this to a size that is fitting for me. So for example, if you only have one or two varieties and you've got a wide screen and you don't want to have to be scanning all the way across the screen, you can drag these bars in so that you're shrinking your columns a little bit, making it easier to look at things side by side as you compare them. So there we go. Now we've kind of got our data ready to look at and ready to analyze and view. But if you notice, there's one thing that might be potentially disturbing, and that is I don't have an even number or an equal number of variety records for each variety. The reason being is not all of these varieties were tried at the same frequency. So if I'm interested in viewing only where these varieties existed in the same trial, that way I'm looking at data side by side, giving an accurate comparison, you can come up here to turn correlated data on. Now correlated data typically is on by default unless you've turned it off. I turned it off and then so I could have an option to turn it on to show you the difference between non-correlated and correlated. So correlated data, again, meaning you're only going to see the data where every variety that you're comparing existed in the exact same trials. So what we can see there now is we've got these 18 variety records remaining for each one of these varieties. Now, it is important to note that if you turn correlated data on, you may notice, depending on which varieties you're looking at, where these numbers don't exactly match up. The reason being is oftentimes there are trials where checks have multiple replicates, and in those cases, those replicates are averaged together. However, they're counted as separate variety records. So you could see where those numbers are different. However, what you will see is where the years are the same and the blocks that those varieties in will be identical. And that will tell you that you're only seeing data where it's part of the same trials. So now we have our data that we want to look at, and we've got it correlated how we want it. And if you remember from previous videos, you can just click on these values here to see the breakdown of the average. So this gives me the breakdown of where that 1088 specific gravity came from by being able to drill down and look at every specific trial. Now, if you wanted more information to be able to compare across in more detail, you can come over here and click on the actual data field name itself, and it will expand out and now show you where you have your gravities for each trial for each variety. So it gives you a quick way to be able to scan here across and see, all right, where are my outliers, or where is something driving this average higher and lower, and how did that compare in that trial to the other varieties in that trial. So that can be pretty handy as you're scanning down through here to see that. Now, as I just expanded yield total, let's say here, these averages seem like they're lower than what I thought they would be, and as I've expanded, I've noticed, okay, here in 2019 in Maine and also in North Dakota, there were some unusual yield values as compared to some of these other regions. Now I could go in here and I could change my trial blocks selected and remove Maine and remove North Dakota. Or the other option that I have is I can come up here to this data filter and I can turn data filters on, and we can say, okay, I want to filter where yield total is within a certain range. So I'm going to eliminate any trials where the yield was under 325. And now you'll notice that my data has been updated here and these averages have been adjusted. So this can be a very handy way to eliminate any of those outliers, those unusual data points that may be extremely high or extremely low, by adjusting the range of the data that you're filtering for, and then the averages are automatically recalculated and you have the ability to do your comparison. And you'll notice here now that our variety records have changed because we've eliminated those trials that didn't fall within the parameters that we've specified over here. I'm going to go ahead and clear that out though, so we can go back to our full data, and we'll go back to our variety list. So one of the options that you're going to have is the ability to export this data. But before we show that, let me show you another tool that you may find beneficial if you need to export this data to try to communicate some values that may be positive, negative, or above or below average. So we've given you these color options up here. When I have green selected, let's say I'm trying to represent this data to somebody, and I want to quickly highlight something that I deem is good or positive. So for example, a low defect external percentage here for LaMocha, 3.7, I can go ahead and click on that and give it a green outline. And then I can say, hey, you know what? Snowden having oversized 1.9%, I'm going to say that's good. And then I can come over here and I say, all right, I'm going to select this red because I want to give an indication that, well, you know, this defect external percentage of 30% is not so great. And then you can come in here and you can mark up, and if you wanted to change a value, say, well, maybe that's just a yellow and not a red, you have the option to do that. And so you can mark up all of these data fields if you like, which just tries to draw somebody's attention, draw their eyes to a specific value, just to help kind of analyze the data as you're looking at it in a more efficient way. And then if you want to clear any of that, you just come up here and click this X, and it is now cleared out. So how do I get this data out of here and benefiting me? So let's say I'm only interested in, I want to see blocks, I want to see years and variety records, and I'm curious in knowing some of these values coming out of the field data, and then I want to see the merit score too. Yeah, chip color is important to me. Defect percentages are important. I want to see oversized. So let's say these are the values that are important to me. And now I want to drop this into a report that I have to make, or it's going into a PowerPoint presentation, right? So I've got the data how I want it. I've resized it so it looks great. And then I'm going to come over here to this far right icon, Save Comparison as Image. And I will go ahead and click on that. And now what it's going to do is going to take a capture of this data and export it into a PNG for me. So now here we are looking at the PNG that is exactly like what we see behind here that came from the compare module, but I can drop this PNG now into any report that I've generated to help represent this information. So if we go back to the compare page where we left off before, maybe I don't want to export this as an image, but I want to just be able to download the data. That's simple as well. You can just click on download data. What that will do is it will dump an Excel document that will have all of this information in it, as well as a second tab that will have all of the detailed information that makes up all of these summary values. So it would have all of this information in there as well. So that can be very beneficial for trying to do some external analysis. And then the last option that I would have with the compare tool is I've put this together now. I want to just share it with somebody and then they can play around with it on their own. So if you come up here to this copy link icon, when you hit copy link, it will copy this unique URL to your clipboard. And at that point, you can email that, text that, however you want to distribute that to someone. And then when they click on that link, it will bring them right to this page and they'll see it exactly as you're seeing it. So they have the ability to look at these varieties as well. So it's a handy way if you wanted to build some sets to share with somebody to say, hey, take a look at this data. And they don't have to type in each of the varieties themselves. They just click on the link that you send them, and then they're looking at this compare data. So that's a quick overview of how to use the compare page to learn more about varieties within Medius.Re.